Earlier this month, it was revealed that National Treasury, in collaboration with the South African Revenue Service, is considering the suggestion of a wealth tax. This is not a new topic, but what is interesting now is the actual consideration of introducing a specific wealth tax over and above existing taxes that tend to affect high net worth individuals. This follows feedback from civil society organizations who continue to champion the cause of getting wealthier folks to pay more in taxes. Well, to give us her take on the latest development, I'm joined by Deborah Tickle. She's an independent tax analyst. Thank you very much for joining us, Deborah. So, National Treasury is said to be considering a wealth tax, presumably because it's still not managing to raise its forecasted revenues year in, year out. Before you give a view on the practicality of such a measure, just on the face of it, how could a wealth tax manifest itself here in the South African context?
Hi there, Nompu, and glad to be talking to you again. Okay, very interesting question. How could it manifest itself when what we have to consider is that we already have wealth taxes in South Africa? So we have an estate duty, we have donations tax, we have securities transfer tax, and we have transfer duties. All of these are traditional wealth taxes, and the estate duty in particular is the one that is recommended by the OECD, which has taken a lot of time looking at the options for wealth taxes. We've also had a number of other taxes that have been changed or added, which are taxes on the wealthy. So if we consider that we have had a luxury car tax introduced in 2011, our CGT inclusion rate was increased in 2016, which means more CGT is paid by the wealthy. Transfer duty, 11% on a property that is transferred that is 2.7 million. These days, not that expensive a property. Dividends tax at 20% rather than 15%, which is the global norm. The estate duty and donations tax are up to 25%, and also the tax-free portions of those haven't changed since 2007. People are not able to plan their wealth taxes away the same as they used to be, because if they put their properties in a trust, they will either pay donations tax immediately, or if they give an interest-free loan, they pay donations tax on any interest they don't charge.
Yeah.
If they charge interest, there will be donations tax. So
yeah.
If there were to be a new wealth tax, sorry, I'm just going to answer your question. I'm just trying to make it clear that there's loads of wealth taxes already. If there were to be a new wealth tax, then the traditional look at a wealth tax would be either one that is a percentage of the wealth of a person at a particular time, or what they call a presumptive tax, which assumes a certain return on wealth tax on a person's wealth. Both of these are problematic in the way that they would be implemented, and should we choose to look at those taxes, both of which will levy very little in the reality of the context of what we need, then we would have to relook at all the other taxes that I've just named so that there's no duplicated taxes. So a very complex scenario would have to take place before any new wealth tax could be put in place. I can talk about the problems after I've given you a chance to ask something else.
Please do. So I know back in the day you were involved in the Davis Tax Committee, which resolved not to recommend the implementation of a wealth tax, and it was a very comprehensive investigation and discussion that took place among your peers. Why was that?
Okay, so apart from looking at all different types of wealth taxes, including the ones we've already got, and concluding that they can be very problematic in the sense that the experience in the rest of the world has not been good with the wealth taxes, which are a percentage of a person's wealth. If we take the OECD countries, there were 12 countries that had wealth taxes in the 1990s. There are now only 4 left. There are 4 which are very advanced countries, being Sweden, Switzerland, the Netherlands and Spain. And India actually tried to implement a wealth tax and removed it in 2015 after a very short time, largely because what wealth tax does is it can distort the economy, it collects very little, and it costs a lot to implement, because what it relies on is being able to value a person's wealth at a particular time, often annually. And as you are aware, wealth changes. I mean, you can have a share that's worth 10 Rand today that's worth 100 Rand tomorrow, and 2 days later it's worth 1 Rand. So how do you value the assets of a person at a particular time? It can also distort investment decisions. So if a person's going to be taxed on their shares, then they'll move into property if that's not taxed. Or if they're not going to be taxed in their retirement funds, they'll move into retirement funds. And one of the things we did find in the DTC, which was rather alarming, was that the majority of the sort of spread out wealth in South Africa is actually within the retirement funds. Of the 6.5 million members of retirement funds in South Africa, over half of those people were people who, at the time we did the report, were earning less than what was the UIF threshold, which at the time was 179,000 Rand a year. Clearly not wealthy. So you can't impose a wealth tax on those people because they're not wealthy people.
Yeah, very, very quickly, Deborah, are you concerned that should National Treasury and SARS go ahead with this, we will experience capital flight with wealthier people deciding to move elsewhere?
I think it's undoubted. I mean, that's one of the problems that we have with wealth taxes, is that the truly wealthy people have the ability to leave. And I'd just like to make a point about policy on this front. It very much worries me that our government seems to have conflicting policies. On the one hand, they tell us they want people to invest their hard-earned money, start businesses, employ people, grow, create entrepreneurial businesses. And what incentive do they have? Well, most people want to make some money and become wealthy. But then they say, well, we're going to take it away from you once you do. So they're almost conflicting the message that, well, we want you to do something that's risky and you're going to risk your money and with the hope that you'll get wealthy. But if you do, we'll take it away from you. What must people do? And I think that's a very dangerous place to be. We need to be very clear on what the policy is and what the message is that we are sending out there to people in South Africa who maybe don't even have the opportunity at this stage to leave.
Yeah.
But the truly wealthy, most of them have a lot of money outside South Africa. We need them to be here. We want the people to come in and to spend their money because they pay a lot of VAT. They pay a lot of income tax. I've spoken many times about the fact that 75% of our personal income taxes comes from people who are earning just over 500,000 Rand. And 10% of it comes from 10,000 people who are earning over 5 million. We don't have thousands and thousands of multimillionaires and billionaires. In fact, there's probably about, in fact, the World Wealth Report said there are about 40,000 people who've got more than 1 million.
Deborah, unfortunately, we have run out of time, but thank you so much for your insights, as always.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay.
Deborah Tickle, she is an independent tax analyst.